Let me start with a question. What's the single biggest negative stereotype about being a hairdresser? Now, some of you will already have a list in your head, but my best guess is that no matter where you are in the world, the most common answer is something along the lines of hairdressers don't earn enough money. Now, you might not say it that bluntly, but you don't have to scroll very far on social media to find that exact sentiment being repeated again and again. So, is it true? Well, as a generalization, yes, it probably is. But it's also true that there are plenty of hairdressers who do earn very good money. So the real question becomes, if both of those things are true, why is it that so many hairdressers don't earn enough? I'm Anthony Whittaker, and welcome to this week's episode of the Grow My Salon Business podcast. Why hairdressers don't earn enough and what they need to do about it is the topic of this week's episode. Now, the number one reason that they don't earn enough is not often talked about, but there is a simple explanation for it. They don't earn enough because they don't produce enough. And what you earn is always directly connected to what you produce. So if you want to earn more, you have to produce more. Now, I'm sure that I've already ruffled a few feathers, but hear me out and listen with an open mind. You can only produce more if a few things are in place. First, there needs to be demand for you. In other words, you need to have clients who actually want to book in with you. I'll come back to that in a minute. Secondly, you need to be willing to work the hours required to meet that demand. Because in many cases today, hairdressing has become a part-time career for a lot of people. And sometimes that's a conscious decision, and other times they're part-time because they need a second job because they're not productive enough as a stylist to earn a good income. But if working part-time is a conscious decision, and for many people it is, and that's often because they have children that they need to work around. And I get it, and that's another reason why hairdressing is a great career choice, because typically it allows you that flexibility. But less hours will usually also mean that you simply can't generate the same revenue as someone working full-time. And therefore, in most cases, you'll earn less. And I think that most people understand that's the reality. Now, here's the important part. The stylists I know that earn a great living behind their chair, and by great living I mean an income that is significantly above the average income. And no matter where you live, those well-paid hairdressers all have a few things in common. To start with, they work full-time, meaning 35 to 40 hours a week. And importantly, they're in demand, they're busy, and they're booked solid. And that doesn't just happen. So why is that? Is it because they're the world's best stylist? No, obviously, they're good at doing hair, but being good at doing hair on its own is no guarantee of financial success. Is it because they have an extraordinary amount of followers on social media? Definitely not. Is it because they charge a lot for what they do? Not necessarily. Is it because they have a celebrity client list? No, it's not that either. The thing they all have in common is that they've been doing this a minimum of 5 years. They don't jump from salon to salon. They're reliable. They give every client 100% of their attention. They give every client a great experience. They manage their time well. They do great consultations. They listen. They make suggestions. They rebook every client. They hustle. They ask for referrals. They don't take the client in their chair for granted. They build great relationships with the clients in their chair. They're always learning, and they're good at doing hair, and they make a lot of clients happy. And as a result, they generate a lot of revenue, and they're paid well too. And it's because they're in demand and are working at full capacity for the hours that they work that it enables them to increase their prices so that they maximize the revenue they produce, and that ultimately increases what they earn. That's it. You see, everybody wants the result, but only a few are really prepared to do the work. That's such an important statement, I'm going to say it again. Everyone wants the result, but only a few are prepared to do the work. The Charge Your Worth slogan is a social media soundbite that looks good on paper, but the reality is that the market will decide what you're worth. And when you've built the reputation and credibility as a professional, then the market will pay you for what you're worth. So it all comes back to that one question. What is the demand for you? Because that's the market telling you what you're worth. And then the follow-up question, how do you create more demand? And I know that's easier said than done. You create a demand by being excellent at what you do. And I don't just mean being good at doing hair. As I said, that will only take you so far. You need to build a reputation for being an excellent professional hairstylist. And that's a mix of the technical skills, the people skills, and the work ethic to bring it all together. And that takes time, that takes grit, and that takes determination. And no one owes you that. The people who are rarely in demand are not standing still. They're constantly learning, constantly improving, constantly refining their skills. Which brings us to something important. Whose responsibility is it to ensure that a stylist continues to grow and improve? The answer is that it's a combination of the individual stylist's responsibility for their own professional development, and, if they're employed, the salon owner, who also has a responsibility to develop their team. And that is one of the core responsibilities of being a salon owner. But here's the problem. Many new salon owners give very little thought to the training responsibility that comes with opening their own business. They're focused on the exciting stuff, the branding, the decor, the products, the vibe, the vision that they have for the business. And then once the doors open, they shift into survival mode, staffing, scheduling, finances, and obviously clients. And somewhere in all of that, structured ongoing training often gets forgotten. Instead, the assumption becomes that we'll hire people who are already fully trained, or they'll pick it up by just being around this. Or worse, they think that someone else, meaning the beauty school, the college, the academy, has already done that job for them. And I get it, because for every salon owner making that transition from being a stylist to being a salon owner, it's a massive leap. But in that transition, there's often a missing piece, and that is the development of your team. So what happens instead? Well, your team learn bits and pieces from each other. They pick things up on social media. They go to the occasional brand event or hairdressing show. And for a long time, maybe that was enough, but it certainly isn't anymore. One of the reasons that we've seen a shift towards self-employment in this industry is simple. It's a lack of leadership in salons. And a part of leadership is the responsibility of training others. And if you're not providing training and structured development for a career progression, then you're not fully leading your team. But here's something important to remember. Just because you own a salon doesn't automatically mean that you know how to train a team. And it certainly doesn't mean that you naturally know how to build a structured development program that actually improves their performance. So yes, you have to do everything. And no, you can't do everything well. Which means that some things are going to need to be outsourced, and training is often one of those things. Now, I get messages all the time about my Super Stylist training program. It's a program designed to develop the soft skills that actually drive income in this industry. Consultations, retail, rebookings, referrals, client experience, communication, all of that stuff. And I often hear from salon owners saying, I love it, but how do I get my team to actually do it? And I understand why that question comes up, but I want to challenge it for a moment, because imagine asking that question in any other industry. If you worked at Apple and the company invested in training, would the manager say, how do I get my team to do it? If you worked at Starbucks, if you worked at a luxury hotel, if you worked for an airline, of course they wouldn't say that. It wouldn't even be a question. So somewhere along the line, we've created an industry where leadership gets negotiated instead of led. And that's a problem, because leadership means setting standards and expectations and following through, not hoping that people just opt in. So now let's talk about what the training should actually focus on, because it's not just about haircuts or color formulas. That goes without saying, and it's another episode completely. It's about the things that actually determine the income and, more importantly, the growth of income. The consultations, the rebooking, the retail, the client retention, increasing the average bill, building relationships, creating demand. And yes, it might not sound particularly exciting, but it is what drives the money. And the reality is simple. People want to be paid more, and they absolutely should be. But they don't get to be paid more just because we say they should. They get paid more because they produce more. More clients, more revenue, more consistency, more value per hour. Now, even with all of that, you still get people who will say, well, I already know how to do all that stuff. And you know what? Maybe they do. But knowing something and executing something are two very different things. I know how to play tennis, but that doesn't mean I'm any good at it. Because knowledge without execution doesn't produce results. And in business, results are the only scoreboard that really matters. So if a stylist is pre-booking 75% of their clients or more, and retaining 50% of new clients that they get, and generating 10 to 15% of revenue from retail, and maintaining a full column and consistently growing their average bill, then yes, they probably don't need the Super Stylist course. But genuinely high performers are often the first ones to want it. Because high performers always want to improve. They're always looking for a distinction to keep them at the top of their game. But in most cases, stylists are underperforming across all of those metrics. Not because they don't care, but because they've often never been shown what good actually looks like in measurable terms. And that's the opportunity. Because when productivity goes up, pay goes up. And when leadership supports that process, everything improves. So let's go back to the beginning. The most common stereotype about this industry is that hairdressers don't earn enough. I agree. The average hairdresser probably doesn't earn enough, and it's directly linked to the fact that they don't produce enough to enable the business to pay them more and still be profitable. The solution is learn to produce more. Create a demand for what you do. So if you want more information about the Super Stylist course, you'll find the link in the show notes where you can watch a free 1-hour masterclass. And from there you can decide if it's right for you and for your team. All right, that's where we'll need to wrap up for this week. As always, you can find out more about our resources at growmysalonbusiness.com, including our books, our online courses, and coaching programs. So thanks for listening, and I'll look forward to seeing you next Tuesday for another episode of the Grow My Salon Business podcast. Bye for now.